I love seeing when they like actually like break down. They don't have one of their many well-scripted responses that they heard on like CNN. The strawman fallacy avoids the opponent's actual argument, so instead argues against an inaccurate caricature of it. Have you ever noticed when debating someone, they never seem to actually answer the question or address the actual topic of the debate? They seem to simply deflect to some edge case, or they simply repeat some well-rehearsed rhetoric that doesn't actually address the topic. Today we're going to be discussing the straw man fallacy. It's a common technique used by leftists and people with incredibly poor logic who actually don't have any sort of substantial arguments. They just simply have some sort of, ideology, theory. Let me just repeat a bunch of catchphrases and words and use alliteration to sort of confuse and bewilder whoever is listening. This is something that's done often, and it's something we need to actually learn how to counter. And to obviously effectively counter something, you need to be able to spot it. So let's dive in.
First, platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
Hi, I'm Layla. This is Propaganda Fluent, where we discuss everything related to propaganda, social engineering, and mind control. Fun! Super fun. Afterward, we're gonna go to the mall. But seriously, I wanted to start by breaking down the straw man fallacy. This is one of the many propagandist tactics used in debates and arguments. So in terms of countering common psychological tactics, I wanted to get started with the straw man argument because because it's used so frequently. And I know that people say that conservatives are supposed to be these logical and rational people, but honestly, they're so emotional and get distracted by this tactic. It's sad. Like, they just seem to deflect and argue against some edge case scenario, or they simply seem to repeat some well-rehearsed rhetoric without addressing the topic of discussion or answering any of the questions. It's not okay. Because with this, the arguer doesn't engage with the relevant components of their opposer's argument. So they're not actually arguing with you on the topic. And that's really important to do when you don't have a cohesive argument. To try to attempt to win an argument, if you just simply don't respond to the initial question, and when you actually don't respond to it and you create a whole other focus of the discussion. And this was even seen in like Congress testimony. A law professor who didn't want to answer
agency.
No, I'm talking about the baby.
And I'm talking about the person with the capacity for
pregnancy. And you're not answering the question. I'm asking.
I'm answering a more interesting question to me.
Do you think that the baby? Note you refuse to answer the question.
It's depressing that we come to this. We can't actually have accurate debates when people are using logical fallacies. The first way you can simply deal with the straw man fallacy when it gets thrown at you in an argument or debate or whatever is to simply dismiss it and ignore it. Just step right over it like it doesn't exist.
Answer the question, okay? Please don't play with me right now.
And then repeat your question, reiterate the question in more clear and concise language so that they can't really escape it, they can't dodge it, they can't run away from what it is, the topic of discussion. The conversation is on train tracks and they're trying to, shift it to the other track. They're trying to move that train. When you instead need to make sure you just keep going down that track, keep going forward, and not letting the train just get derailed into whatever straw man they want to construct. Ology. So effectiveology.com does a really good breakdown of what a straw man fallacy is, and they also give really good, concise counters. How to counter a straw man. A good way to minimize your vulnerability to a straw man argument in the first place is to use clear and definitive language with as little room for misinterpretation as possible. This makes it more difficult for your opponent to distort your stance and make it easier for you to correct them if they attempt to do so. So you need to be vigilant. You need to be diligent. You need to be aware of where the conversation's going. You wanted to get started with the straw man argument because it's used so frequently and so many people seem to succumb to it. I don't know. I guess we sort of get strung along and we're so impassioned when we talk to other people that we don't really notice when they're not actually answering our question. It's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to get someone to engage in a conversation with you and engage in a debate if they don't want to engage, like they don't want to answer your questions. I mean, I love seeing when they actually break down, they don't have one of their many well-scripted responses that they heard on CNN or some TikTok video. They just sort of shut down. So that's always fun. So coming up, I'm going to be going over the 7 most common propaganda devices as defined by the Institute of Propaganda that were outlined originally in 1937, back in the good old days. Okay, conservative.